the superintendent, and I will fan them out to the appropriate people on the staff so that we can get those answered in a timely fashion for the board. One of the things for our 2 new members this evening, we do catalog these questions as we get them by number so that we can reference them and reference back to them at any future point in time. In addition to that, we do review them at regular intervals. Typically, we do them at work sessions and do them by number. And then those responses will become part of our budget website that's going up on the FCCPS website. We're committed to being completely transparent throughout this process. One of the things we're going to acquaint you to this evening that I think is an extraordinary document is the budget book that you have this year that digs in very deeply into all of the things that we've talked about. And all of that, the budget book, the budget presentation this evening, any links to videos from tonight's presentation, any community meetings that are filmed as well, will all be available at the fccps.org. And if you put in keyword budget, that will get you right to all the materials and supplies you need to be able to make some good decisions about where we are with respect to the budget. So Chair Anderson and Vice Chair Russell, with that, I end my budget presentation this evening. I'm open to comments, potential questions, but I will say that primarily what we'd like to do is answer most of the questions in the work session and take those under advisement until we get there. Once you've completed any comments or questions that you have for me this evening, I will turn it over to Kristen Michael, our Chief Operating Officer, who will orient you to the budget book, because I think it will serve as an excellent resource for you through this budget process. So thank you for your time, and I welcome any thoughts, questions, and comments.
Thank you, Dr. Noonan, for a comprehensive presentation. So if there are initial comments, thoughts, questions for Dr. Noonan at this point from board members, I'd be happy to have those asked. But otherwise, as Dr. Noonan said, sending those in an email to Dr. Noonan so that he can collect them and distribute them appropriately, and then route them back out to us and to the community, that would be great. So are there initial questions? Mr. Redinger.
So just, I did send 3 questions to Dr. Noonan and Ms. Michael before. I did want to amplify one of them a little bit. So the 3 questions were around how we calculate the likely expenditures for salary and benefits and salary lapse in particular. The second one was what actually is included in the adjustment for contract length. Because there's been a lot of interest among the support employees to making sure that we're adequately paying for the amount of time that we spend for our paras in particular. And the third around, the budget includes 2 additional social workers. I'm interested, as I think a lot of other board members are, in making sure that we're going as quickly as we can to having the right ratio of psychologists, social workers, and counselors across all of the schools. And so I appreciate the addition of 1 FTE, maybe 2 half FTE, but I think that's a subject for further discussion. The thing that I wanted to expand upon and the additional request I wanted to make is, having seen your presentation now, I'm very interested, as I said, in the actual calculation around salaries and benefits, because over the long term, steps ought not cost anything, because unless your staff is getting more and more senior over time. So I gather that there's on any one year it may go up, but I'd like to understand when we say that the increase is about $971,000, if memory serves, for a step, whether that's above actuals or whether that's above the FY20 budget, and then how we calculated the lapse of $59,000 from that. Because a lot of that is sort of, right now, murky to me. And since salaries and benefits are such a big part of what we do, that's a place I'd like to see data. The addition I'd make to the 3 written questions I submitted is I did not see in the budget book, and I appreciate that Ms. Michael is going to go through it right now, I see that on the school-by-school budgets, that there are FY17 actuals, 18 actual, or FY17 budget, no, actuals, FY18 actuals, FY19 actuals, where we are on FY20, and then the proposed budget for '21. What I'm really interested in seeing, not for all of those pieces, but for the big line item school-wide budgets, is what was the 19 budget, sorry, what was the 18 budget? We're in 20 now, right? What was the 19 budget? What was the 19 actuals? What's the 20 budget? What's the 20 forecast? And what's the proposed 21 budget? So the idea being, how did we execute? Where did we have extra resources or places we didn't execute last year? Where do we foresee that going this year? And then what are we predicting or proposing for next year? Because that's the thing that I would look at to figure out if we're budgeting properly and if we've got, we're putting the resources in the right places. So that's just a general request. I don't expect an answer right now, but that's
Thank you.
what I'd like to say.
Thank you for that. And we appreciate those questions, the three in writing, and then we'll do our best to capture the fourth question that you've asked.
Thank you, Mr. Reitinger. Other questions? Mr. Webb?
Question I have, and then we can talk about it at the work session. It's more about the social worker piece. Down in Richmond yesterday at the VSBA Legislative Conference, the governor mentioned about some additional funding that's coming within that area to try to bring that ratio up. Is that some of the additional funding that you were talking about that we're potentially coming into that's going to help us be able to afford and move? We already have the ratios, but actually to afford to pay for additional social workers within the district.
The additional money that we're receiving from the state is going to help us pay for that additional social worker. The vast majority of the compensation, if you wanted to bifurcate the budget a little bit, you could look at the general government's transfer pays for salary and benefits, and the state transfer pays for the additional pieces of social worker, English language arts, et cetera. So yes, the additional funding that we're receiving from the state does afford us an opportunity to increase our social worker by 1.0. One of the things that Michelle Kopic has been looking at and working with her colleagues across the region is looking at what are the ratios of social workers and how do we fall within those ratios. And so as we gather that data, we can share that information as well at the work session so you can see exactly what is our ratio currently and what would it be if we got the additional social worker.
Any other burning comments and questions right now, otherwise? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Noonan. Ms. Michael is now going to walk us through the budget book.
Yeah, and I'm going to resume my seat up front. I just want to, again, thank you all for your time and attention this evening and look forward to working with you over the next month and a half to get to that point where we adopt the proposed budget or the adopted budget by the school board. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Noonan.
So thank you. After tonight's meeting, John Brett, thank you, John, and our communications department is going to post a number of items on the website for the community to access. The first is we are posting Excel files of all of the data that we've included in terms of the charts for each of the different funds. So you'll find all of the Excel charts for the school operating fund as well as the community services and food service fund. In addition to that, tonight, based on feedback from the board, we've also included what we're calling Budget at a Glance, which is a front and a backside sheet. We've put it in the left-hand pocket of your binders. That really is kind of that high-level overview for the community of a little bit of the budget in one page, a front and a back. So the front is really the narrative part of the letter from the superintendent, and the back part of that document includes the summary financial charts, some information on enrollment and our cost per pupil, and then our revenue and expenditure pie charts and links to the budgets. We hope that one-page budget at a glance will really help the community. In terms of the budget document that we prepared tonight, our goal is always continuous improvement and try to respond to the feedback that we've received. So I would just like to walk through that document and point out the new things that both you and the community can find in that book. When it's published online, you'll find at the very beginning a table of contents. That table of contents hopefully will help orient everyone to the information included in the packet. Our first chapter is really the introduction. It includes the letter from the superintendent, as well as the presentation that Dr. Noonan gave to the board this evening. Section 2 is our goals, so that's our placemat and our triennial plan. And then when we look at Section 3 about FCCPS, this is a section that we've really worked to enhance. So the first thing that you'll notice that's new is we've included a basic about Falls Church City Public Schools kind of fact sheet on page 73. It tells a little bit about our mission, our schools, our students' ethnicities, graduates, SAT scores. And then following that, with some great help from Mary Beth Conley and our principals, we actually have written descriptions from each of our schools. So a really nice overview of each of the individual schools that was added. And when we look at Section 4 is enrollment. This year, in addition to the enrollment information that we've presented previously, you'll find on pages 88 and 89 that we have a much longer historical view of enrollment. So we have a chart that actually goes back to 1986 in terms of enrollment, in addition to the wonderful bar chart that Dr. Noonan presented tonight that Michelle Kopic developed. Also included in the enrollment section, we've put the FCPS student by dwelling unit information. So looking at that, that's also included in the budget document. When we move to Section 5, that's our 2021 budget highlights. So it has information about each of the new items that Dr. Noonan went over this evening. Section 6 is our operating fund, so it talks more about our revenue in the operating fund for 2021, as well as our expenditures. And that's where you'll find our school operating fund statement, as well as revenue and expenditures by object or by type. Section 7 is our other funds, so community services, food service fund, and our capital improvements. And then in Section 8 is our appendix. So we've also made some enhancements here that I hope are very helpful to the board and the community. The first is when we get to page 171, we had previously shared with the board and the community what our school planning factors were. So what are our formulas or our ratios in terms of positions like principal, classroom teacher? The enhancement that we made this year is we've added a state that shows what the state accreditation standards are. So it shows, how many principals do you need per school or how many teachers. So after the elementary school planning factors, another thing that we've added this year that is new, that we hope is helpful, begins on page 178. And those are staffing charts where we've indicated for each school how many positions do they have. And we've given you their actual staffing for fiscal year 19-20 and what the proposed staffing would be for next year, as well as the change. And then following that, in the same section, after the salary scales, one of the other things we've really separated and tried to highlight this year is our tuition rates and student fees, which you can find on page 197. They typically in the past had been kind of blended into our miscellaneous pay rates, so we really tried to separate them out to increase that transparency. Continuing in the rest of this chapter are all of the additional financial charts. Those are the Excel files that are available online. We also have a section for board members as you work through this budget process in Section 9 for you to keep your budget questions and answers as we publish them. And for your reference and the community, the prior year budget questions and responses are on our website. Section 10 will allow you to have prior budget work session material for the board's reference. We included information on student achievement as well as enrollment and budget in this binder for your reference. And then we also have a section for presentations from the general government, which includes the fiscal forecast that they shared with us. So we really hope that this enhanced budget document is useful to both you and the community, and we really do look forward to your continued feedback on how we can continue to make this better.
I'd like to, if I may, just take a second to, again, thank Michelle Kopic and Kristen Michael, Ms. Michael, for doing this. One of the things they've made a commitment to, and I hope you'll see it in this, is every year have materials that are better than the year before. And so I think that this year begins to really get at some of these pieces that I think our community's been asking for, and again, speaks to our transparent nature of a budget.
Thank you, Ms. Michael, and thank you, Dr. Noonan. Any comments, questions quickly, just to help with organization and understanding our budget books? Hearing none, I'll just take the moment to say thank you. I already saw some things in here that I definitely recognize there's improvements from last year that were in response to questions that I know came from members last year. So thank you very much for the work that went into this. It's clear there's been a lot. So thank you. All right. If there are no other comments or questions on this item, we can go ahead and move on down to item